Candice-Rodarte here with some unscripted words about the following episode. This conversation with Mirit Hoffman is about elder care and elder law, and it is extremely fascinating. And Mirit Hoffman, our guest's origin story and why she is so passionate about elder care and elder law is really remarkable. The thing is, Mirit is living in Israel, and Israel is currently entrenched in a brutal, horrible, ugly war. And it doesn't matter what side of the war she's on. She's still living in a war-torn country. And I failed to talk about that during the interview. It's a failure that I take full responsibility for. I should have addressed it. Instead, I waited until we were done recording to simply ask her, "Are you safe?" And the look on her face when I asked her that question made me regret that I didn't talk about it during our interview. So, Mirit, I am so glad that you are safe. And I so appreciate that you took the time to share your story with the Gratitude Geek audience. Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast for micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. I'm your host, Candice-Rodarte. If you love eavesdropping on conversations between grateful entrepreneurs who are making this world a better place, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Today, I'm joined by elder law attorney Mirit Hoffman. Mirit is the founder of Mirit Hoffman Law Office, where she specializes in estate planning and elder law. Mirit is passionate about strengthening family connections across generations while addressing her clients' day-to-day needs. With expertise in both U.S. and Israeli taxation, she takes a comprehensive approach to estate matters using legal tools like enduring powers of attorney and advanced medical directives. As a member of the Global Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, STEP, Mirit shares her knowledge through lectures and a newspaper column on family relationships. But first, before we dig into this groovy and important conversation, a word from our sponsor. This episode of Gratitude Geek, a relationship marketing podcast, is brought to you by Sweet Harvest Farms. Sweet Harvest Farms' organic handmade bath, body, and spa products are free from harmful chemicals and additives, ensuring a gentle and nourishing experience for even the most sensitive skin. From luxurious soaps to decadent lotions, Sweet Harvest Farms offers a complete range of bath and body essentials to elevate your skincare routine. After trying Sweet Harvest Farms Body Silk Lotion, I'm not sure I can ever go back to using any other lotion brand again. It leaves my skin feeling soft and silky and never sticky. And here's an exclusive offer for our Gratitude Geek listeners. Save 15% off your entire purchase when you enter discount code Gratitude Geek at checkout. And if that's not incentive enough, get free shipping on orders over $100. Don't miss this opportunity to indulge in the ultimate pampering experience. Make the move to organic handmade soap, bath, body, and spa today by visiting sweetharvestfarms.com. That's sweetharvestfarms.com. All right, welcome, Mirit.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Candice.
All right, so there is so much there. You obviously have a good story, so tell it to us.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, I could just go home because that was such a great introduction. That was awesome. I am an elder law lawyer. I'm also a gerontologist. I realized that
Hold the phone. That is a word I've never heard before.
A gerontologist?
Yeah.
Gerontologist is all aspects of the elderly. Understanding what they're going through as they go through transitions of your 60s, your 70s, your 80s. And since I do deal with elder law, I felt that it was really important to understand the whole aspect of becoming an elderly or a senior citizen, or however you want to call it, the golden age. And I found that would really help me with the conversations that I have with the clients that I have. And especially when you're dealing with estate planning, especially when you're dealing with wills and enduring power of attorneys, it's not just about the document itself. It's never really about the document. It's more about How are they dealing with the family? What is really important to them? What do they want to transfer onwards? Why are they not doing what they want to do right now? There's a lot of stuff going on. And you really need to understand a little bit about their mindset to be able to really plan it according to what they want, and really what they need.
Okay. Now that I've interrupted you, tell us your story.
Okay, so actually my story is pretty interesting. I got married at 21. I have three beautiful, amazing children. I got divorced at 33 with actually zero career because what happened was I got married straight out of law school. I did the bar, I did everything, but I decided I want to be a stay-at-home mom. That was the sort of the decision that we made as a family. So when I got divorced, I was sort of starting from scratch with three very small children. So what I did was just trying to build myself up, really not really knowing where this is going to lead me. Ended up in a fantastic law firm that deals with actually transactions, real estate transactions. Became a partner, and then after 8 years decided that we're parting ways very nicely. We still do things together, but we were going in our separate ways, and decided to become an elder law lawyer. And I was like at the beginning thinking, I really like talking to people. I really like helping people. I'm sort of a mini social worker. I really want to do something which is meaningful. And then realizing that the issue for me is I like to be in control. And I find that preparing wills and enduring power of attorneys is basically keeping people in control as much as they can of their assets, either whether they're doing it when they're no longer alive, transferring it to the next generation or to the next generation, however it is that they want to do it, or with the enduring power of attorney, which is really like a durable power of attorney, being in control in situations when you're no longer in control because you're incapacitated. But the whole idea is staying in control. And once I realized that that is really my passion, the rest is history.
Okay, so we're going to need some definitions here.
Sure.
Straight up, what's a will?
Okay. A will is actually transferring your assets when you're no longer alive, how you want your assets to be transferred onwards, whether it is you wanted to go to your children, to charity, to just your grandchildren. And there's a lot of family stuff that comes up when you think about these things. First of all, people don't like thinking about the fact that they're not going to stay alive forever. That's one big issue. And the other big issue is when they're not alive, they still want to stay in control of what they want to do. I mean, we have some crazy stories of people saying, I only want to give my son if he doesn't marry the girlfriend that he has right now. Otherwise, he's out of my will. And I was like, dude, you can't really do that.
Wow.
Really do
That's very
that.
shallow.
It is. It is. But from the person who's preparing the will, he thinks like that is the be all and end all of how he wants his assets to be transferred. Or people, especially in blended families, I find that a lot, where people say, you know what? I don't want to divide it equally between all the children, her children, my children, and our children. I want to give our children double and the rest get, half. And that's also an issue because, from their point of view, keep asking them why is that what you want? And they say, well, look, we only have together that these children, the other blended, the other stepchildren from either side have their own, they have, another parent from the other side, so they're going to get. It doesn't always work like that. And there's so many incidents when it's actually the child from the child who is the child from both those parents who keep saying, mom and dad, I'm not interested because when you're no longer alive, I have to live with these siblings.
Yeah.
I want to keep a relationship with them. Thank you very much. Don't do that. But that is a lot of the times the default of what they come to me, and they think it's like obvious, and they're like, shoot, that's what we want. Let's just go ahead with it. I have a couple that it took 4 months for me to try very gently to try and get them to understand that it might not be the best idea to do. Because at the end of the day, also don't forget, I'm a lawyer. I have to do what the clients want, but I want to make sure that the clients get what they want in a way that doesn't go to court afterwards because somebody's going to contest this will.
Okay,
So
so
that's
how do you avoid a will being contested?
Well, according to the law, a will can only be contested if they feel that the person, when they prepared the will, there was some sort of outside force forcing them to do what they did, or they were incapacitated when they prepared the will. It's not so much what they write, it's the question of what was their state of mind when they wrote it.
Mm,
So if somebody says, listen, I want to give only one child and the other child doesn't get anything, and it is written in a way that it is very clear why, it's very difficult to contest it. The fact that you don't like the fact that you didn't get anything from mom and dad doesn't enable you to contest a will. But the idea is that if you write such a will, even if it doesn't get contested, at the end of the day, you have two children, they're never going to talk to each other. Is that really what you want?
yeah. I love the way you're coming at it, this angle that you're coming at it from, because it is about what happened. I mean, once you're gone, the consequences, you don't get to, you want to dictate it, but you don't have to deal with the consequences.
Exactly.
At some point you got to let it go, let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
Exactly, exactly. Or there's some other cases where people have like this really good intention. I had a couple where they have 20 grandchildren and they wanted to give not just the children, but the grandchildren as well. But they made this really crazy, complicated formula, 1 out of 8 out of 16th out of, I was like, stop, 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 stop. You have one grandchild living in Australia, and another grandchild living in New York, and another one living in Israel, another one living in Jordan, another one. How are they going to deal with the one time divided by 8, divided by 16, divided by 20? Like, how? You also have to think about how it's actually going to get implemented. It's not enough that you write a will. You have to understand how that's going to work. So, it took months, but eventually they understood that maybe they should just write a sum. That would be so much easier. So each grandchild gets, I don't know, $10,000. Boom, easy. That's how they get divided. That's how they get it. Enough, not with these complicated formulas. So that's also something that people have to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this whole thing of fairsies. Why do we always have to be so fairsies? Why can't we just, do what our heart tells us to do?
You know what? It's hard. It's really hard. Because I had another family, another story. They have 2 children. They don't have a lot of money. The regular Joe Schmo has a house, has a small bank account, has some savings, nothing very fancy. They have 2 children. One is very well off. He's a businessman. He has lots of real estate, very well to do. And the other was sort of, never like, she's not married yet. They don't know what's going to happen with her. She still lives at home. She's in her late 40s. They're a little bit worried about her. They wanted her to have the house. And I said to them, okay, that sounds maybe the right thing to do. Have you spoken to the children? Do you know? And they were like, yeah, we know it's going to be fine. Our son has so much money. He doesn't need it. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. And I was like, okay, but I guess they were sort of a little bit worried because they took what I asked to heart and they did have a conversation with the son. And then son was like, but why? Why do I feel like I'm being punished? Because I worked my ass off to get this money to make a living for my family. And here's my sister sitting on her ass, so to speak, not doing very much, and she gets a whole house. Like, why? Why do you think that's fair? And they realized that it wasn't so much the fairness, it was the idea that they felt that the child is feeling hard done by, not because of the amount of money, but because the message the parents are sort of giving out. So I'm not saying everything has to be fair. I'm saying at the end, maybe just it should be, because so the children stay in connection with each other. While you're alive, give presents. Don't be fair. Give whoever needs more. Whoever doesn't need, don't give or give less. But that's a conversation that nobody has to know. Nobody has to know what you're giving while you're alive. You definitely don't have to explain anything. It's your money. But at the end, when there's nobody to argue with and there's only these two siblings, you really want them to stay in connection. That's really should be one of the, and that is when I ask people, what do they want at the end of the day? They want, they want their family to continue. They want to have, good relationships. They want their children to grow up together. They want their grandchildren to be friends with each other. They want cousins, they want that to go on. In order for that to go on, you have to be smart.
I'd really like to know what the solution was to that brother and sister in the house.
So what they did was they actually listened to me. There's it's nice when people listen to you. They actually listened to me. They said, okay, we're going to split it evenly. It's everything going to be 50-50. But I'm telling you, they said to me, we're starting to give the other daughter a little bit more, and we're sitting her down to say, maybe move out of the house. We'll help you, but maybe you should just move out of the house. Maybe just give her like a kickstart. Just push her a little bit, because they felt maybe she was just living off them, not in a bad way, but just sort of not moving. And that was actually the best thing they could do for the moment.
That sounds like a good solution.
It is.
Yeah. I love the idea of living in your grandparents' house, have a house passing down from generation to generation. But you see these family farms that were 300 acres. And then they got divided by 3 sons, and then they're 100 acres each. And then they got divided by all their kids, and they're down to, everybody gets half an acre.
That's true.
And that can get pretty ridiculous.
Absolutely. Look, at some point, you also have to think smart. We weren't talking about big acres, but at some point you have to think smart. And sometimes the smart thing to do when there's a lot of children, especially when there's a lot of children, is to sell.
Yeah.
And you can write in your will, I would like the house to be sold and the proceeds to get divided, split evenly between the children. And then that's it. Because when you have one house and 4 siblings, one want to sell it. One might not need the money. One might want to rent it out. One might want his children to live in it. And that can be a catastrophe. So if you already put in your will, sell it, then there's no question.
A house is a great asset if you use it as rental property.
It is.
I would want to figure out how to make it a rental property so that they can pass. Never mind. I'm just, that's the way my brain works.
No, it's a good way. No, I'm saying, look, there isn't one golden solution to anything. You really have to think about it, sit with the family. That's why I like the fact that I get to sit with them and talk to them and realize a little bit about their family. And at the beginning, they look at me and say, why are you asking us all these questions? We just want you to prepare. And I was like, just sit down. You'll figure. I promise you, it's not because I'm nosy. I promise you, it really has to do with what you want to do, and then they understand what goes behind all my questions.
So, this is I call my dad out every once in a while. I'm calling my dad out, right? So my mom passed away 12 years ago, and he remarried, and my mom and dad set up a trust. 30 or 40, when I was a teenager, they set it up a long time in the 80s, right? And so all of their assets, everything was in the trust, including the house. Right. And my dad thought, because his mother had dementia, that he was going to have dementia. Well, my dad's 82 years old. He's sharp as a tack, and he's still very active. He's not going to have dementia, but he always thought he was going to have dementia, and he'd have to go into a long-term care facility, and he was going to sell his house, and that was going to pay for his long-term care. That was his long-term care policy, right?
Right.
And so he's telling me this story. He's sitting on the couch with his new wife. They've been married 2 years, maybe. He's sitting on the couch with his wife, and he's telling me this story. And I looked right at him and I said, Dad, where's your wife going to live when you do that? And he's all, well, she's going to live back with her kids. They live on the other side of the country. Why would she want to live where her husband is? So sometimes people just don't.
That's a good point. That's such a smart question. Such a smart question.
So he ended up purchasing a life insurance policy for her, since everything, the assets and everything have already, the trust is already set, and it was way before she was involved, and so she's not in the trust, right? So he set up a life insurance policy, so at least she'd have something, right? Which was, I'm not sure he even would have thought about it. because his vision didn't include her when they created their plan, right? There was
Kudos to you. Kudos to you, Candace. Seriously, because not everybody thinks about these things. It's a really good question. It was a really good question that you asked him.
well, I mean, was he really going to leave his wife out?
He
Well,
probably didn't think
and,
about it. He was probably
here's the thing. I mean, when he passes, he's 10 years older than her, so chances are he's going to pass away before she does. And if we follow everything, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to her because the house is going to be sold and the assets are going to be divided just the way you said, right? So we have to make sure that his wife, who's taking care of him, none of us have to take care of him because he has a wife, right?
right.
That she gets taken care of too, because that's fair.
I think that's a lovely idea. And I think it's kudos to you guys, seriously, because not everybody thinks like that. And that's super important. And that actually is the second document that I prepare, which is the durable power of attorney, which deals exactly with those situations of incapacitation, for instance. And then what happens, especially in second marriages, because in first marriage, you're thinking, okay, she's mom, we're going to take care of mom, everything's going to be okay. But she's not your mom in second relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't even have a good relationship with the second partner at all.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So
And then
really,
she has her kids,
right,
and
right,
so
right.
there's a whole dynamic there. So there's a lot of different I mean, and there's also trust. I mean, we haven't even talked about trust yet.
That's true.
So for someone who has no idea what a trust is, explain that.
Okay, well, trust is actually a document that you prepare so that you don't have to go through probate a lot of times, and also so you don't have to deal with inheritance tax in the US if you accumulate enough wealth to predict that you may have the 40% inheritance tax. So you put things in a trust, and it's also something that you can do for next generations and as many generations as you want. So you can transfer assets. You can also transfer assets to yourself while you're alive, meaning everything goes to you as long as you're alive. And when you pass on, then it goes automatically to whoever it is that you put in your trust. And people who have a lot of wealth can actually, move it on and on and on and on and on and on and on until, there's nothing left. There's a lot more leeway in trusts. There's also all kinds of trusts. There's charity trusts, and there's trust between, spouses. There's special trusts. There's all sorts of taxation issues that play around with trusts. Special needs trust, people with special needs children that have prepared trusts, and that's one of the reasons that they do prepare the trust, to make sure that somebody's taking care of that child when they're no longer capable or when they're no longer alive. So there's a lot of issues to do with trusts. It's a good vehicle. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's definitely a very, very common vehicle that a lot of people use.
So who wouldn't it work for?
Well, if you are not living in the US, then a trust is less relevant for you. People who live in countries when there's no estate tax, for instance, people who live in countries when there's no probate issues, for instance. So there's not probate, sorry, when their probate is not an issue, meaning everybody has to go through probate. So the trust doesn't really help them. Where taxation is very, very high on a trust, so there's no real incentive necessarily to prepare one. There's a lot of different aspects. When you have most of your money offshore in Barbados, not necessarily a trust is going to help you. You have to figure out a little bit. It's a little bit more complicated.
So the answer to that question is talk to your attorney.
Yes, talk to your attorney.
What you said that you talked about a dollar amount. What is the dollar amount? When should a US citizen who doesn't have anything offshore, at what point should they be considering a trust?
Well, let's think about that. Look.
Again, consult with your attorney.
Yeah, look, it's there. Look, I can give you parameters, but it's really, really different from person to person. People who like to stay in control with their money, I don't know if a trust is necessarily the great thing for them. People who want to be able to have a trust and then not worry about it because they put whatever they put, then it gets accumulated somehow into the trust, and the trust just, gets all that their estate per se, and they just transfer onwards. Yeah, definitely. People who have LLCs, they put it in a trust. People have investments, they put in a trust. Life insurance sometimes gets into the trust. Things that can grow, things that may grow and become something worthwhile, definitely they put in a trust and then they just leave it there.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. That you also talk about prenups
Yeah,
and contracts for senior housing facilities. These are prenups is a good idea for people who get their second marriage, I guess. I mean,
absolutely. I only deal with prenups for second marriages.
and then contracts for senior housing facilities. And these are all things that I'm in my 50s. I'm not thinking about these things.
Well,
Right?
obviously, you shouldn't be thinking about these things right now.
So what does that look like?
Senior housing facilities?
Both of those questions. Prenups. Well, let's talk about prenups first.
Okay.
Who needs one?
I think, honestly, every couple which is in their second marriage that have accumulated wealth should think about a prenup. Prenups are really important. It's like the elephant in the room, though, because you don't really want to talk about it because, it's not romantic to talk about, okay, let's talk about money. It's not romantic. You don't really want to deal with it. However, it's not so much about you. It's a lot more about what you want to do with the money afterwards. Do you want to give it to your kids? Most of the people in their second marriages who love their spouse, has nothing to do with it, still want to ensure that the money goes down to their children. And that's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean that they are in a less loving relationship than they were to begin with. It just means that they're preparing themselves and it's smart. And that they also deal with a lot of stuff, prenups deals with a lot of stuff that when you talk about it beforehand and you come into this relationship knowing everything, it's much easier afterwards because, you've discussed it in a calm way, hopefully, and you came to some sort of conclusions. It's all black and white. You're not going to hopefully look at this anymore. So there's nothing to really argue about and there's no surprises afterwards. And I think it's really important to be, have an open mind and open your eyes when you're going into this, especially since you have accumulated money. And it doesn't matter even how much. It could be the wealthiest businesswoman who has a lot of money, and it could be, the housewife who got out of a not nice divorce and managed to get something out and wants to make sure that whatever it is goes down to her children.
Hmm. What about there are a lot of stories about I don't know if this is a phenomenon that happens in other countries, but there's a lot of stories in the United States of women who marry a man and the man says, I don't want you to work. I'm the man, I'm going to make all the money. And then he divorces her and she has nothing. And so she's going to bring nothing with her to the next marriage. Can a prenup protect her from being stranded again?
Very good question. So look, the idea behind the prenup is also to be fair. Okay. So when you have a situation where somebody who doesn't have anything going into a second relationship with somebody who has something or a lot even, there's two sides to that. On one hand, the person who comes in with the wealth wants to make sure that that wealth or a big part of that wealth does go down to his children. At the end of the day, it's his wealth that he brought in with him. On the other hand, you also want to make sure that this person that he's living with, he might live with for a very long time, might be the one taking care of him if he's incapacitated or whatever, also gets something at the end of the day. So if it's not part of what he has now, like you suggested, having a life insurance for her to make sure that she's taken care of, or somebody who has more than one real estate asset, giving her maybe in his willing her one of those assets to make sure that she doesn't stay, like is not getting stranded, like you explained. That is something that is also discussed in a prenup. A prenup is not necessarily, I'm going to keep everything and you're going to get nothing. A prenup is actually part of that is the discussion of what's going to be. And when she goes into that relationship knowing that she's going to be okay, she's much calmer. And when he goes into the relationship knowing that she doesn't really want everything else, she's just worried about the fact that she's going to be okay, he's also okay with the relationship. Everything is so much calmer afterwards.
Yeah, it's about communication.
It's really about
Yeah, and I can't imagine if I was in the situation where that happened to me, if I'd ever want to get married again, because you raise their kids and then they leave you and they give you nothing. They leave you with nothing. They divorce you and leave you with nothing. And I can't even imagine that I would feel like I'd ever want to trust a man again. So
sometimes, yes, sometimes you feel like you don't have a choice
yeah,
and
that's
you're
true too.
worried and you're actually scared of being by yourself. It's scary to be by yourself. As you get older, people are worried about being by themselves. What happens if I fall? What
Yeah.
happens if something happens to me? I just need that person there. They're willing to take the risk. And I hope that they take the risk with their eyes open.
Yeah. Let's talk about when somebody's ready to move on to a senior housing facility. What is that process like?
First of all, it's a very hard process. Even when you know you should, it doesn't necessarily mean you are going to do it. As you get older, especially when you become a widow, but even not, even a couple, sometimes, the house is too big on them and children don't necessarily live next to them. And meeting, in the States, there's these big meetings of Thanksgiving or Christmas is just not sometimes good enough. And you want to have people around you, because the more you have people around you, the less you feel old, the less you start thinking about, oh, my hip hurts me, my head hurts me, my arm hurts me. When there's things going on and you're not alone with your thoughts, it's actually better for your mindset and better for your health. So it's time to move on. And moving on, there's some beautiful housing facilities, especially when you're all there still. There's some really beautiful housing facilities with open lawns and swimming pools and activities. And there's a doctor on call, and there's all these people your age. And, you can talk about things that all interest you, and you can play bridge in the afternoon or not. And, you sometimes have, these trips that you guys go on, and it could be fun.
I have a friend who's in her 80s and she has a 1-bedroom apartment with her dog and her cat in a senior living community. They have shared meals if they want to, but they have their own kitchen, so they don't have to share meals if they don't want to. And they have, all the amenities that they can share if they want, but they also have their own,
Right.
kitchen, their own apartment. Right. But her favorite thing is that they have 24-hour access to soft serve ice cream.
Oh, that's lovely. Love it.
Because that is such a little tiny thing, but I'm sure it makes everybody there happy.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome. I think it's an awesome thing.
But
Ice cream on tap. It's great.
She is always busy. She's always busy. It's a good place for her to be.
Look, and it really could be really amazingly fun. And then you're also not arguing with your kids. Why didn't you come? You said you were going to come. You didn't come. You did come. Who came? Who did? You don't have that. You don't have that anymore because you're busy. It's great.
Yeah. But that's not the same. An assisted living facility like that isn't the same, or a senior living facility like that is not the same as assisted living, which is where they need to be taken care of.
Right.
So
That's more difficult. Then there's a whole other aspect, because those could be very, very expensive, and not everybody can afford them. Some people would prefer to have a live-in, like a caregiver that stay at home. Sometimes family members actually are the ones that take their parents in. A lot of times that's what happens. And there's an arrangement either with the parent that they sort of pay them or give them money or help them out in order for them to be able, because sometimes it's a 24/7 thing. Sometimes, the child gives up his job and this becomes his job to take care of his parent, depending on where the parent is health-wise. And sometimes there isn't a choice. And it's just the best thing is to have 24/7 doctor and a nursing care. And there is no place other than the assisted living.
Yeah. Again, there's no one size fits all for anything.
No, but that's why communication. So important.
I'm super curious about this Global Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. What's that about?
Wow. So STEP is actually originated from England. The whole trust issues was very big in England. And when I was thinking of pushing on my career with with elder law, and before actually gerontologist was the last thing I did, I was thinking, okay, trust is a big issue. I really should maybe dig a little bit deeper and find out what that is. But I couldn't be bothered. I was too lazy to start a whole new 3.5 years in university and doing a whole new degree on trusts. So my second best thing was looking for finding something which would be available, also courses online, which is really what I wanted. And it was a proper degree, but it gave me, some leeway to be able to do it at my own pace while still having a lively practice and being able to support my family, and also being part of this global society of trust and estate practitioners, learning all about trusts, learning the tax issues in various countries, and really giving me a bigger picture of what this is all about.
Sounds like something really groovy.
It is.
I love how global the world is now. We people complain about the pandemic, but I think it created so many opportunities for people. And we had to work at the speed of lightning to implement a whole new way of doing business, a whole new way of working. And I don't ever want to go back to the way it was before.
No, I think it's amazing. I think, first of all, Zoom became super popular, and it became amazing. Also for my elder clients, when definitely with COVID, they didn't want to have anybody around, and I was really worried about going to their house and giving them, God forbid, something. So Zoom became the way for us to communicate. Also, Zoom became a way for us to communicate. It was good for them because I would check up on them. And it was another way for me to say, hi, how are you doing? Also with my parents weren't getting any younger. It was a good way for us as a family to be able to still stay in touch with them and, be there for them and help them and do things with them. But the truth is, my first thing was when Zoom became popular because of the epidemic, was thinking, wow, mothers now really can work hard and can have a proper career and doing it while still taking care of their little children, because they can do a lot of it from home.
Yeah.
Special single parents, there's a real blessing for them.
Yeah. And there's something about being able to see each other, talking on I don't even like to talk on the phone anymore because I can't see the other person.
Right.
So I love Zoom and FaceTime and all that, even on Facebook Messenger, you can do a video conferencing. I prefer to see your face when I'm talking to you.
Absolutely.
My grandfather told me this story once when I was real young. I was a teenager. But he was like 6 years old in 1918 when the Spanish flu pandemic hit the United States. And I guess it hit the world. He remembers hearing a conversation that Clara died. And so I always wondered why my family was so small. I mean, because my grandfather was Italian, right? So Italian, I should have had a huge family, right?
Right.
I always wondered why my family was so small. And it turns out, because I did a little genealogy research, it turns out that they all died during the Spanish flu pandemic. Like in 1918, 1919, his entire family died, right? He and his brothers and sisters and his mom and dad were the only ones left, right? Everybody else died. And so they didn't have Zoom. I mean, they had a telephone, and back in the day it was,
Expensive.
call the operator, and you rarely
Yes.
ever made a phone call. But they didn't have, I mean, my grandfather had no idea who Clara was. He just remembers hearing that Clara died, right? And it was his cousin, right? And so having the Zoom, having the video made it a lot easier. It just made it just gave us that personal, we could still have a relationship with people and see people, even if we couldn't touch them.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I just, that's a little perspective. I mean, it's a complete tangent, but it was a little perspective.
No, it's important. Look, I think at the end of the day, connection is what glues us together. And when you see the person, it brings the connection to becoming on a different level. There's a totally different level of connection when you see the person and when you talk to them on the phone. Especially when you're isolated because of COVID, every connection like that makes a huge impact on you. It gives you something to look forward to. It's really important.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
No, I think you were really good. You just covered pretty much everything.
Okay, so I want to talk about I want you live in another country and you do business in the US. How are you doing that?
Well, I live in another country. I don't do business in the US. I
Okay.
do business with clients who have US assets, but still live in the country where I practice law.
Ah, okay. Okay. So your practice is in Israel.
Yes.
Okay. How okay, and then do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Because you're obviously an American. So your accent.
I'm Canadian,
Are you
actually.
Canadian?
Yeah.
Well, it's very minor differences in the accent. So what led you to want to move to Israel?
Oh,
I know
that's
there's a personal question and you cannot answer it if you
no,
don't
no,
want to.
no. It's a good question. I actually was born in Israel,
Okay.
and I lived in Israel till I was 3. And then my parents moved to live in Canada, and we stayed to live in Canada till I was 10 and a half. And I learned all my language skills in Canada. And then we came back to Israel, and I've been living here ever since. But I made some decisions on my own, which would be I'm only reading books in English to maintain the language. And I had a lot of English speaking friends when I grew up. And I worked in practice. It just so worked because my English language was very good. I worked in offices with a lot of, and which needed a lot of the English there with a lot of Anglos, either as clients or as partners in the firm. And I married an English guy. We spoke only English at home to maintain the language basically for the kids. All my kids are all English speakers, even though they're complete Israeli. And that's it.
Fun. Fun. I hope no Canadians were offended by what I just said.
No, I don't think so at all.
Oh, fun. Okay. So, why are you doing the podcast circuit? Do you have something to sell?
Why am I doing the podcast circuit? First of all, because I love the idea of talking about gratitude and being grateful. And I think your podcasts are awesome, Candace.
Oh,
Really
thank you.
listen to them.
Thank you.
I myself have a podcast, by the way,
Okay.
very into podcasts.
Well, promote it.
My podcast is called To Talk. Significant, it's called To Talk. It's Significant Crossroads for Seniors. You can find it on Spotify or on Podbean. I talk to various people who deal with various aspects of elder issues. And the idea is basically to broadcast it. A lot of people don't know all the aspects. It could be it could be, a neurologist, or things to do with dementia, or, special diets that maybe as you get older you should think about, or sports, music therapy, a lot of basic issues, and also other issues just to enrich people's lives because of things that people just don't like to talk about or don't know. So I love giving out information. I find that super important. And people like to give information, so it works really well. And that's just my baby. I love doing it. I've been doing it for over coming up to 3 years now.
I think that podcasting has introduced me to some amazing and unique people that I would have had an opportunity to meet otherwise. So that's why I love doing it. I just celebrated 10 years in January.
Wow.
That's a lot of groovy conversations.
Yes, that's amazing.
It's a lot of
Kudos
groove.
to you.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
spreading gratitude everywhere I go. Okay. So how do you market as an attorney and as a podcaster? How do you market your business? I mean, do you have like a favorite marketing tool, tip, or technique?
Wow. So many different ways. First of all, the podcast, even though it wasn't supposed to, became a marketing as well, because all the people that I host on my show became sort of advocates for me, not on purpose. It just worked out like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my clients bring their friends over, which is, the best marketing tool. It means you're doing a good job, I guess, if they're bringing their friends to come to you as well. I lecture a lot mainly in Israel, but also on Zoom for various other groups on the topic of estate planning. I give out webinars and seminars, and I'm on panels in different shows. We're doing a panel. There's going to be a panel in June where I was asked to talk about estate planning. And I stopped writing just because I was so busy, but I used to have a blog about the relationship between parents and their grown-up children, like the sandwich generation topics that people like to talk about. And that's also something that, brought me more clients, because I wasn't actually talking about estate planning, but I was sort of talking about estate planning, but it gave people the idea about who I really was. And that's another marketing tool.
Well, the sandwich thing is happening again. 100 years ago, it was common for parents and for a family, a nuclear family, to include the parents and the children in this, grandparents, parents, children, all living together in one home. That was a pretty common thing. And then it wasn't common, but now it's coming back into favor. The cost of living in the United States, it's really difficult for a young couple to buy a house. It just is. The salaries haven't gone up. Cost of houses have gone up tenfold, right? So it's difficult for a young couple to buy a house. And so the whole and plus it's a built-in babysitter.
Absolutely.
If you can get along with each other, why wouldn't you want to have a family that all lives together in harmony?
Absolutely. But the key is, if you get along with each other, don't forget.
Yeah. But if communication is there, you'll get along with each other.
Yes.
And I
would hope so.
And I think that divvying up the jobs, like mom shouldn't have to cook every night. If you shouldn't expect grandma to do all the cooking. You should be divvying up the jobs, unless grandma doesn't want anybody in the kitchen. If grandma says, "Get out of my kitchen, this is my domain," let her have it, right? But all of that needs to be communicated.
100%. Again, I think everything at the end of the day goes down to communication. As long as there's communication, everything is so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is your moment of gratitude. Mirit Hoffman, for whom or what are you most grateful?
Wow, so many things. So first of all, you said I can do more than one, right?
Yes, you can.
So, wow. Well, the easy one is I'm really grateful for my children. I have 3 beautiful children. My eldest got married in August. She's 27. I have a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old, and they're all beautiful, amazing children. And I am super grateful. I actually have, you call it this necklace which says mom on it, that I got for my children 10 years ago, and I wear it every single day. That is like the biggest present the universe could have given me, my 3 beautiful children. I'm grateful for my partner. I've been divorced now for over 18 years, and the last 4 with a partner, and super grateful for him. I keep telling him, you were worth the wait. It's a total different level of relationship that I was used to up until now, and it's probably the last relationship that I'm going to have, and I'm super grateful for that. I am super grateful to the universe, if it's God, the universe, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it. I'm very, very grateful for that, because it really led me to something that was a very rocky start for me, to a beautiful, flourishing practice, which I love. Waking up every morning and feeling that you're doing something that you love doing is a blessing. And I am super grateful to have that blessing. That's sort of, and of course, grateful for my parents and my family, the regular stuff.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast for micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. Make sure to visit gratitudegeek.com for all the groovy ways to connect with our guest, Mirit Hoffman. I've been your host, Candice Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.